Today, we're getting under the hood of breast cancer with Cherie, an executive creative director in the advertising industry. When were you diagnosed, and how did your journey to diagnosis unfold?
Well, I guess even going back to my 20s, I've always been aware of breast cancer. My grandmother and my great grandmother on my father's side both had breast cancer. But as I've mentioned that to doctors, they've always said to me that breast cancer on the father's side isn't as concerning. But I do have dense breasts. So I've had ultrasounds and biopsies since I was in my 20s. In 2017, I actually had a benign lump removed. Um, so yeah, I've kind of always been concerned and on top of my breasts. Except in 2018, I landed my dream job in America. We packed up our life and off we went. Life was busy. Not having my regular doctors kind of saw those regular checkups go to the back of my mind. At the end of 2019, I actually fell pregnant and everything in life was falling into place. But then the pandemic hit, right? My husband wasn't actually on my health insurance at that time. And I was pregnant. So we rushed back to Australia. They were closing the borders. And we came back here. We did our 2 weeks isolation. And then we had a checkup for our baby. And we found out that at 6 months pregnant, our daughter had an extremely rare condition that wasn't compatible with life. And we were told there was nothing they could do to save her. So suddenly, our life and everything fell apart. I was completely broken. Cut then to the end of 2021 when I gave birth to our second daughter, our miracle baby. I kind of share a bit of this background because I guess my focus wasn't on me and my health. It was career. Then the pandemic hit. Then we were in a world of grief. And then when our daughter was born, my life completely became about her. So if we then go to diagnosis, it was mid-January last year. My daughter was 2, and I suddenly realized that, my own health checks had slid to the back of my mind. So I booked it all in, the general health, the skin checks, and of course my breast checked. I mentioned to my doctor that under my left breast, it kind of just felt a bit uncomfortable, really. It wasn't painful. I couldn't feel a lump. It just a bit of discomfort, especially when I laid on it. He had a check and he didn't really, think anything of it either. But he said, let's just go have an ultrasound and see. So, off I went for an ultrasound, which led to a mammogram, which led to biopsies, which led to cancer being found in my left breast and my lymph nodes. I was 41. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought I was way too young, but the type of breast cancer I had, turns out, is more prevalent in young women, even much younger than myself, women in their 20s, 30s. I found out even pregnant women, which I just thought was crazy.
What kind of breast cancer did you have, and what stage was it?
So I was diagnosed with the most aggressive form of breast cancer, which is triple negative. It's a hormone negative breast cancer. And initially I was staged at 2B, but later down the journey, I found out that I was in fact stage 3.
What treatment options were offered to you, and how did you decide which path to take?
I feel like it was just such a whirlwind, right? I was diagnosed on a Wednesday. The following Monday, I met with my surgeon. She booked me in with an oncologist for that Thursday. My oncologist booked me in to have a port inserted. So the port is where you have all your infusions, so that you don't have to go and get a needle in your arm. Your veins can just be all messed up from that. So that was inserted ASAP, and chemo started in like 5 days. So it was 1.5 weeks between cancer diagnosis to starting treatment. Like there was no time for second opinions. it even took me like a few weeks into treatment to fully understand my treatment plan. I was complete like deer in headlights. I had sheets of paper that kind of just read out this is what would be happening, and it really all just didn't mean all that much to me. But I understood that my cancer was extremely aggressive. I could physically see it. In just 3 weeks, my cancer went from slight discomfort when I saw my GP, my doctor initially, to my nipple inverting, and it had yellow crust, and I could feel a much more predominant lump, like there was a lump there. It was like completely terrifying. Thankfully, though, like I trusted my doctors, and I was lucky to have a great team of doctors supporting me, considering how fast everything happened. Like I didn't choose my oncologist, my surgeon chose my oncologist. But triple negative breast cancer is extremely fast growing and aggressive. A lot of deaths from breast cancer have been triple negative because there weren't many treatment options. They would, it is a hormone negative. So, they would throw chemo at it and hope that that would shrink the cancer, but they weren't really sure. In Australia, only right before I was diagnosed, immunotherapy was introduced alongside chemo, followed by surgery as the recommended protocol for my type of end stage of cancer.
How did treatment affect your daily life?
Really knocked me. I think when I was first diagnosed, the initial doctor I had seen said, you know, you're going to have chemo, because I was like, just chop my breasts off, just chop them off and let's, that's fine. She was like, you definitely need chemo. It's going to be a really shitty year. And she wasn't wrong. I was having weekly infusions for the first 12 weeks and averaging probably about 3 good days a week. It was impossible for me to work. Chemo, brain fog, nausea, the fatigue, they're all so rough. The really bad days, I mean, it's not like, for me anyway, I wasn't vomiting like you kind of see in the movies. The really bad days, I would just lay in bed and I would just stare at the wall all day. I felt soulless, like a bit like a zombie. I wasn't there anymore. So those were the bad days. Um, and after the 12 weeks, I moved to a heavier treatment they call the Red Devil. And that was every 3 weeks for 4 sessions. So that's when I had fully lost my hair. I look and felt my sickest. I think that's when I looked in the mirror and I'm like, I'm a chemo patient, right? Like I look like I have cancer. It's hard to ignore. So then on your good days, you might be feeling good. You look at yourself, you see yourself, and man, you just look so, so sick. The Red Devil really hits hard. That's, it's got its nickname for all the right reasons. But strangely enough, I was fine with it. I was like, yes, give it to me because I want that cancer completely obliterated. So after 6 months of chemo and immunotherapy, I had a lumpectomy and lymph nodes removed. Thankfully, the chemo and immunotherapy did their job. My cancer in my breast was completely gone. No lump, nothing. So they took the tissue and tested it. No cancer. Unfortunately, 1.1 millimeter of cancer was found in one of my lymph nodes they removed. They recommend if they find anything above 1 millimeter that you have chemo tablets to kind of clean up anything that might be left there. So I had 1.1 millimeter left. My team assumed that it was in the process of dying, but they didn't know. So after surgery, I had 5 weeks of radiation, another 6 months of immunotherapy, and 6 months of chemo tablets. So I finished all of my cancer treatment in April this year, and I'm happy to say that I am currently cancer-free.
What support systems helped you the most?
It has to be my family and friends. as soon as I was diagnosed, it was just like a a magnet. I guess I was a magnet for my village. I call it, like they were just the greatest support. I had a chemo schedule, actually, a rotation. So every session, someone different came with me to infusions. It turned those days into kind of like a social catch up, that I actually looked forward to, because I was feeling my best on chemo days out of, all of the days, which is strange. And also my breast cancer sisters. I had so many survivors rally around me to help me navigate the journey, and with support and advice. And there's nothing like, those that have gone before you to kind of help you navigate the tricky things, and to also show you that, like, they got through it, and that gave me that hope, that I could get through this as well.
Has your experience with breast cancer changed your perspective on life?
Um, it's shown me how strong I am mentally, but also how strong I need to be physically. I guess, I've never been one to love exercise, I have to admit. But I learned so much about how important exercise is, to just keep your body strong. So, and also nutrition, just make sure you're feeding your body, and keeping your body in its best shape, really. So I'm on a healthier path, and I feel great now. Right now, I feel probably even better than I did before cancer, which is crazy. I'm only just starting to get back into work. And, before all of this, I think work was such an important part of me and my life. And, everyone talks about work life balance, right? But it isn't just a phrase to me anymore. It is literally survival. Stress and, being overworked, but making sure I have time for my nutrition and my exercise. Like, these are all things that are incredibly important to me now. My family, it isn't just about my career and my work. There's so many things that are going to help me survive. And recurrence is such a scary thing, and like, a lot of people go through cancer and everyone thinks you're done, you're finished, and that's fantastic, but it doesn't feel over. Like, it's there still. It's there. It's threatening. It could come back. That's just the reality. It really could. So you trying to do everything to stop that from happening, really, or lower your chances at least. I need to be by my husband's side to watch my daughter grow. That's something I just cannot miss.
What advice would you give to someone who has been newly diagnosed?
Build your village. As I said before, this journey is hard, and you really shouldn't do this alone. So ask for help. If someone offers help, say yes. Take it all. As I'd mentioned, that chemo schedule and the rotation of who came to infusions with me, was so important, not just for myself as well. It actually gave my husband a break. So he wasn't at every single appointment or every single infusion. And I loved the catch ups. Like I said, I was strangely feeling my best when the chemo was going in. So I'd have a few hours to sit there and chat and be with my friends or family or whoever came with me for that day. I really looked forward to those days. So taking those little wins and taking that help from people, to say yes, take it, take that help.
What resources or treatments have made the biggest difference in your recovery?
I had a therapist, and I also had an exercise physiologist, that I saw regularly throughout treatment. Keeping your mind and your body as strong as you can is so important, and it seriously helped me so much. Um, I personally couldn't handle throughout treatment more than some very small weights, stretches, 30-minute walks, but it all helps, especially after surgery. So if you're having, depending on how big your surgery is, but you're having lymph nodes removed, all of that, you need to be exercising and stretching, especially if you're going into radiation. You have to hold your arm up like this for sometimes up to 40 minutes. Seems quite easy if you haven't been through surgery, but after you've had lymph nodes removed, that is actually incredibly quite hard. So just, yeah, making sure you're staying on top of it from the very beginning. You may not feel like doing some exercises, but do as much as you can because it all helps.
What do you wish you had known at the start?
Um, that, breast cancer can affect any woman at any age. I wish I had taken that message so much more seriously and focused on my own health, especially as a new mum. Um, Regularly checking your own breasts, I guess, not just waiting for those yearly mammograms. So setting a reminder, say on the first of every month, knowing what is normal for your breasts, that can all save your life. Don't ignore any consistent discomfort, pain, changes to your breasts, because finding cancer early is really your best chance of surviving it. I'm lucky that I went to my GP when I did. If I had left my discomfort for even just one more month, my cancer was so aggressive that I could have been stage 4 by then, and I may not be like talking to you right now. I was kicking myself, and I remember saying to my surgeon, I hadn't been for my mammogram and I felt so guilty. And she said to me, "You could have gone for your mammogram like maybe in October. And then you would have gone, I feel good, and not worried about it. And then been a year." And she said that might have been too late if you waited for that next year. So that blew my mind. So I think, not just waiting for those mammograms, but making sure you're checking, like it's literally in our own hands.
How did the experience make you feel, and how did you cope emotionally through it all?
Um, I think early on, my husband and I both agreed breast cancer wasn't actually the worst news that we've ever been told. Being told there was nothing that could be done to save our first daughter was completely shattering. I think I was being told that something could be done. So I think we both, like, it was after maybe even the day I was diagnosed, we just looked at each other and said, no, something can be done. Until they tell us that nothing can be done, we've dealt with worse. So that kind of really helped. I think that going through that grief and having that behind us actually helped me emotionally get through this. But of course, I was terrified. At my lowest points, those negative thoughts creep in, and reality was that I could die from this. But I read something early on in my journey that really helped me. So it said, when a situation is 50-50, of course, you'll entertain the worst case scenario. But if it is 50-50, then it's only fair to also entertain the best case scenario too. So during my treatment, on those really bad days, on those low moments, my mind would spiral, and I'd let it sit there for a little bit, because it's, it is healthy to also to live in those spaces and not ignore them, but you got to take yourself out. So I would, switch to then changing my mindset of like, what if this works? And I would start to think about taking a trip with my family. After this is all done, I'm going away. I need to have a holiday with my family and create, beautiful memories. And, when I finished my treatment, it was that same month, at the end of that month, we did it. We took off on a family holiday, and it was just the best reward. Everything I had been working towards was that moment.
What are 3 tips you'd share with other women facing a similar journey?
As I said before, exercise as often as you're able. It sometimes feels impossible, just like a 30-minute stroll, though. Light weights, any kind of stretches, all of it will help support your body. Your body is going to go through so much. So if you can do these little things, it truly does help. Ask questions and advocate for yourself. If something feels off, if you have a side effect, say, from treatment, flag it to your doctors or team straight away. I was constantly like either calling my oncologist if something popped up, or emailing, or, just staying on top of it, because you're feeling so sick, and then if a side effects pops up, you don't need that as well, like bringing anything down. So just get on top of it straight away. Don't feel like you're um, asking too much, or just, yeah, get straight on top of it. And then I guess the third thing is like just take each day as it comes. The biggest thing I remember thinking is like, every day you won't feel like a warrior, right? You expect to feel like a warrior, you're fighting cancer. But throughout treatment, that's just not reality. You're not going to feel like that warrior every day. On the bad days, though, remember that while you might not feel like that fighter, your body is literally fighting. And that's why you feel so shit. So just remember that.